Hi, welcome to VMware Recovery Demonstration for the Unitrends Certified System Administration course. In this how-to video tutorial, we're going to take a look at creating VMware recovery jobs. We're going to look at file and folder and application recovery, putting back an entire guest recovery, and an instant guest recovery in audit mode. Once again, it starts here in our lab. I'm logged into my target in this case. You can do these recoveries through your target if you've enabled through the configuration of your appliance's remote management. And once again, also, anytime you log into your appliance, you want to check for alerts and updates and make sure everything's looking good. I've got 0 errors up here, 0 errors in replication. I do have an alert for an update on my target. I'm going to show you how to do that in the ongoing administration module. Make sure you check that out if you want to see how an upgrade works. We're going to do some recovery here. So one of the other things you really want to do is make sure that in your active queue right now, you don't have any active jobs, especially against the stuff you're going to recover against. And then also, you really might want to check your job manager and make sure you don't have anything getting ready to start here. It's 11:30 in the morning. Let's see here, I've got a 12:30 p.m. here and a 1:30 p.m. and a 12 p.m. here for some SQL. But we're not restoring SQL. Those are real small, so I can let those run. Don't have to worry about anything with that schedule. We're doing VMware recovery down here, and my next VM snapshot is set for 12:30 this afternoon, which is about an hour away. I should be done with my recoveries by then, and so I don't think I'm going to disable this. This is only against the RDR server. We are going to be restoring that, and maybe when this schedule kicks off, we'll see what happens. But that's kind of where we're at. Once again, we're doing VMware recovery, and we're going to start looking at our VMware assets, right? We've got 3 schedules here. We've been backing up these assets. We have recovery points for these assets, right? If you go over here to the Protect tab, let's look at the local appliance here. You can see I've got some warnings that I've been addressing the last couple days in my backups. You can kind of see that history. But if I look at my virtual environment, right, you can drop down a little bit farther in this navigation tree here. And this is my virtual, my VMware environment. Now, you may have vCenter, and then from that vCenter connection, you'll see all of your guests on all of your hosts. Or you may register to individual hosts. You're going to go to those hosts or go to those areas to check these statuses. Now, you can't recover from here. Once again, this is just kind of showing you which machines you have backups for. I've got good recovery points for all these machines. So we're going to show you how to recover these machines, even though the backups here have been kind of giving some issues the last couple of days. All right, I did some other tests on the appliance as well. What we're going to do, we're going to take a look at our recovery section here in just a second, but I also want to show you that in the dashboard, once again, you can also click on the protected area over here. And let's go over to, this is running off of our target, by the way, and we're not doing any local backups here. So the protection summary here off the local appliance doesn't read the same, first of all. All right, so let's go over here to the local appliance, and we're going to click on, once again, through the dashboard, the protected summary, or the protected assets, and you once again now can see the protection summary report. And what I want to look at is across these assets here for VMware, you can see that I still have good backups, and notice that this report is for the last 7 days, basically. It's now March 16th. This goes back to March 10th. So I have good backups within that date range for these assets, which allows me to recover these. It's another way to kind of check to make sure you can do recovery across a certain asset before you go looking for backups. Because when you go to your recovery catalog or your recovery area and you start to look at your backup catalog in here, you'll notice once again you see all the assets. You can see the VMware icons for the VMware assets here in the list, right? So you can see that icon really easy. It stands right out for you. There is no way to filter on VMware assets up here. There's no way to sort or filter here in this screen, you'll notice. So once again, if you are looking for a particular VMware asset, you can start to filter on the name of that asset. Maybe we want to look at recovering a domain controller from VMware, right? We can see the recovery points going back here through March 9th. If you want to go all the way back a little bit farther, there may be even more recovery points if you set that filter back a little bit farther now. Here they go all the way back to March 3rd. Now, once again, you may have warnings in here. I like to show you this too. Let's filter on SQL. We have a SQL VMware asset. You'll notice you also have an agent-based asset. But in here, you'll notice I have one warning from SQL. It's still a good backup, but it did give me a warning. I can recover from that. When I look at the first recovery I want to show you guys how to do is file and folder and application type of recovery. Now remember, in the VMware demonstration, we turned on application aware for this machine, and we ran recovery points across it with application aware. So what you'll notice is that if you go to a particular point in time, we have a full in here from the 3rd of March with incremental. Remember, this schedule is a monthly full with incremental forever through the rest of the month. So here you can see I've got a bunch of snapshots here. I did purge a bunch of stuff doing some other testing earlier, and now I've got backups here to the 15th. I did get a new incremental last night at 9:54 p.m. You can see that there. When we kind of look at putting back files and folders and applications, once again, depending on which point in time you want. Somebody may only want a change back from the 4th at 9 o'clock, or they may want to go all the way to the newest recovery point as of last night at 9 o'clock. Right? These run once a day at 9 o'clock. So if I want to pull back files and folders from within a virtual guest, then I can click on Recover Files. You'll notice here that it prompts you to create a recovery object. A recovery object is a share that's based off of the appliance over an NFS. So when this process is started and completed, if you open your File Explorer and you go to the appliance address that you ran this recovery from, you'll notice a new folder in here called FLR. We're going to come back to this in just a second. We're going to let this process finish, and I'll show you exactly how you can find this path, because now that I ran a file level recovery in my toolbar down here, I can now go to the file level recovery area, and I see that virtual client mounted from that point in time. You can see I can access it over iSCSI and CIFS. If I highlight this client, or guest in this case for virtual, and I show the details, it shows me the folder I'm looking for right here, FLR 113, off of the path of my appliance I showed you how to get to. There's also some additional considerations for mounting Linux guests. If you do have to pull out files and folders from Linux clients, you can do that. You just have to make sure that you use the iSCSI initiator and the scripts that allow you to do that. Windows, you can access it directly. Once again, if I go back to this share and I open up the FLR 72 folder inside of here, whoops, let me refresh. It's not 72, is it? Let's make sure we're looking at the right folder here. It's 113 now. Here it is right here. FLR 113. So make sure you pay attention to that folder. Inside of here, volume 0 is the little tiny boot volume. Volume 1 is my C drive. If I have SQL installed on this server, then I should be able to go to that instance. If I have application aware turned on, I should be able to go to that instance and recover these databases manually through this process. I would open up a remote desktop session to my SQL server. From your SQL server, if you go to that same path off of the appliance, FLR 113, I can go out to the same SQL directory. Here's all my databases. You can see them all now because I'm on a SQL server. There's the name of all those databases. You can see them all in there. There they all are. Now, if I want to recover one of these databases, then I have to open up my SQL Studio, connect to my SQL databases on the backside, and if I wanted to recover my customer's main DB from back here, I would have to go ahead, first of all, and take this thing offline. I would have to then make sure that I detached it. Now I could go through the process of copying in the new database from this location. Right here and any of the log files that go with it. Those two right there. By copying those two objects, let me hit Control-C or right-click and copy, and placing those in the same directory on this machine now, locally, we are now going to be restoring these two databases from that recovery point. We want to copy and replace or don't copy. Copy but keep both files, right? We want to replace and overwrite, so we're going to put that one back. And we're going to do the same thing with the main DB. Now both of those have been restored from the virtual point in time through application-aware settings. So now back in my studio, I can go ahead and reattach to the database. And we're going to do customers main DB. And there is the log file with it. So we reattach that database first of all. There's our database back online from that point in time. Pretty cool. Very easy to do. Extremely easy to do. Once again, we do SQL recovery through the SQL application agent. Make sure you check out the SQL application agent to see how you put the databases back directly through the Unitrends agent. Okay, now when you're done with any type of file level recovery, you want to make sure you remove, right, close out any mounted points, shut down any drive mappings to it, whatever you've done, make sure you close all those out. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I close out my studio. I want to make sure I'm not in this share anymore out here. Make sure you're closed out of all of those. Then you can go ahead and remove this file level recovery object from the Satori interface. When you remove this, it's going to tear down that share inside of the appliance. Now you don't see that folder anymore. Very easy to recover any kind of file. It doesn't have to be an application. If I wanted to recover from my backup catalog a file off the file server, I filter on the file server, I go to whatever point you're looking for, and you mount that recovery object. Okay, by creating this recovery object once again, it's creating a folder off of the appliance. It's going to be a new FLR number, file level recovery job. Back here, we can see it's done. I can go into the file level recovery area, highlight that guest, and show the details. It's FLR 109 now. I can refresh this, FLR 109. This is my file server. I may have some files in a user directory I need to pull back. I can go into any user directory. There's downloads area. I can copy anything out I need to recover. If I want to bring this VMware out, I can go over here to my C drive or my desktop, and I can paste this right from that virtual snapshot to my desktop even. Extremely easy to bring back anything to any location. Depends on where, once again, you open up that share location from. Go to the server, the destination you need to put the stuff back, and open this location up. Now here's something to think about as you're watching this thing copy over. This is where your resources are really being used. The time you submit the copy job or the paste to wherever you're going to go, and it does start to copy that data off of that share, that's when you'll start to see the resources being used off the appliance and the client to copy the data to the destination. Opening up a share uses resources as far as retention, but it's really not using extra processor or memory until you start to do the actual restore. Whatever you're going to extract out of that virtual snapshot, then you'll see some network resources go up. You'll see some CPU resources go up on both sides to send and receive the data. So you can see that job's all done. I could run the installer from here, whatever my end result was. Check the file out, put it back to its proper destination if I need to, whatever your next steps are. When you're done with that job, whatever your restore is, you want to make sure you remove these points in time. Now, we'll show you that in the Satori interface, you can now mount more than one point in time at a time. So if I go to my Exchange server, I've got an Exchange asset here. You can see the DC Exchange 2, that's my physical agent, and I can see the VMware icon, and I've got a backup here. This is a restore that I did earlier last week. I'm talking about the virtual recovery here. You can see all the points in time going all the way back to March 3rd here for Exchange Server. I've got a synthetic full even in here. It just took all these. This is on a weekly full with daily incrementals, but the load here, these incrementals are so large and our storage is so tight that it is creating synthetic fulls because it doesn't think it can keep all of this retention. But anytime you do recovery, just make sure you're looking at your catalogs, and once again, you're going to go to whatever point in time the end user needs the file from. If they made the change sometime earlier today and you ran a backup against that server then since, you can pick that new change up even. Or maybe you picked up that new change. Or, maybe they need to go back to last week. Whatever that date range is, find your recovery point. You're once again going to click Recover Files, and you'll notice now once again in the Satori interface, it will let you create more than one file level recovery object, but the rule of thumb is I can only create one per virtual asset. So if I have one created for the file server already, I can create one for Exchange, but now that I've created one for Exchange, I can't create objects for the file server or Exchange. I would have to tear either one of those down to create a different recovery point for Exchange. The reason I bring that up is because some people may say, well, I'm not really sure which recovery point it is, so let's bring up Tuesday's point on the file server and Monday's point in the file server and go between them and see which one it is. Well, you can't do that. You'd have to mount Tuesdays, you look at it, tear it down, mount Mondays, look at it, tear it down. That's why sometimes, depending on what type of recovery you're going to do, it may be better to use the Unitrends agent, file level agent across that asset so you can do file level searching. Once again, maybe check out the agent-based file level recovery demonstration to see an example of how to search across the agent-based backups. But here, once again, if you go out, you can view the new object here for the Exchange server. You'll now go out and see FLR 111. So once again, if I go back to my appliance here, I see FLR 111. I can go to volume 1. If I had application aware turned on, I may be able to come in here and restore my Exchange. Exchange Server V15, and here are my mailboxes. If you have a single simple server of Exchange, you may have one mailbox out here. You can do a virtual snapshot of it and recover the database the same way I showed you how to recover SQL. Now, once again, when you're done with both of these, you can only highlight one at a time. But once again, when I am done with any type of recovery, I will go ahead and tear these down to make sure I'm not going to affect any of my retention against these assets. All right, the longer you leave those up, the more you run into the chance of affecting your retention for those assets. Now, I've done a couple of file level recovery mounts up here. So if you go and check the recent restores in here, you'll actually notice that you don't see them listed in here. Any type of VMware recovery is going to show up under the recent system jobs. In here, if you sort it by filtered, once again, make sure you're looking at everything at the top. You're going to see where you created the file level recovery object and where you tore them down. Here's where I created the images, and here's where I tore them down. Here's where I created my first SQL job and tore it down as well too. So pretty easy to do file and folder level recovery. Now the next type of recovery is putting back an entire VMware guest. So you come into VMware, you check your RDR server, you open the console, you poke around in it, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, it's corrupt or it's down, what's wrong with it, and it's not a priority machine, so you don't need to do it instant recovery and use all those resources. You just want to put the machine back, maybe even just want to clone it. So if you want to clone a machine or put the entire VM guest back, you'd go to your recovery area in your backup catalogs once again, and you'd filter on that asset name. Here once again, look for the VMware symbol, go to whatever point in time you want to recover to, and instead of doing file and folder recovery, we're going to recover the entire guest. We're going to show you here in a few more minutes how to do VM instant recovery if I did need to put this back in a hurry. Once again, this is the difference. Normal recovery is putting the entire VM guest back. All right, so first thing we're going to do in here, once again, is if you're tied to vCenter, you'd see a list of all of your hosts from within that vCenter. If you tie to one host or 2 or 3 hosts directly, you'd see those hosts listed in here as a target location. That's the ESXi host you want this machine to go back to. You may be using resource pools and resource groups. You can also go ahead and identify the resource you want to use. You may also be using a certain storage for your recovery. Maybe it's test storage. You can identify the data store that you want this virtual guest to go to as well too. In the next screen over here, some final details. Once again, it's not going to overwrite by default. If I need to put this machine back in DR kind of mode, I want it to go back to the original name, I may need to take out the underscore restore. I'm going to go ahead and hit save down here if I wanted to put it back. We're going to change the name at the end there to clone. Now, if I save this job here, you can see all the details of where it's going to go. This is, once again, normal recovery. So this is going to recreate our RDR server kind of in a slow boat method back to our VMware host. It's going to show up once again in the no backups group down here. We'll see it in that group. Now, when this job officially gets started and this screen goes away, you will be able to see this job. When you clone a machine or put it back the entire guest without instant recovery, it does create an active job that you can see in your queue. So now it says the restore has started successfully. If you go to your jobs once again and your active queue, you can see all of these restores queued up. Once again, this is an incremental forever, and I have not ran a synthetic full yet. The first restore that it's going to put back and queue up in here is going to be the full. It's going to put the full back first, and then all of these incrementals to recreate this machine. You can see that process may take a little while depending on the size of the machine and the size of each one of these incrementals to get it up to date. That's why you either want to run your own weekly masters or bi-weekly, monthly masters. If you know you need a full on certain times or certain days of the week, then run them on your own. Because synthetics, you never know when those processes are going to happen, and here's probably 2 weeks of synthetic backups right here that it has to recover through. If you need to control a little bit more of the recovery time, you may want to run your own fulls, especially on critical servers that you have to have up a lot faster. And this is cloning. This isn't really a time-sensitive server, but if I wanted to take this exact same server and the exact same recovery point, just to give you an idea of this, we're going to take that exact same recovery point, and I'm going to go back even farther just so we can see exactly how far back this goes. All the way back to, once again, March 3rd, my original full. It's putting that back now, then it has to do all of these incrementals to clone that machine. But I'm going to take this same recovery point, and I'm going to show you the same machine instantly recovered up before it even gets probably through 5 or 10% of the cloning process. We're going to put it to the same pool, the same data store. We're going to do an audit mode here. Once again, we're doing live audit mode. You'll notice in audit mode down here, even in audit mode, I can still choose the network for the appliance. You'll notice in the notes here, though, if you click on this, that it says during instant recovery, a network share is created on the appliance to allow access to the backup data. It's going to open up a share on the appliance once again, so it can access the VMDKs off of the appliance. And that's the network that it's going to use to create that share. So here, once again, you can see the final steps. I really like the new summary here in Satori. And I can rename this. If you know you're doing an audit on this machine, maybe you want to come in here and call this an audit. Go ahead and save that job. You can see that change. And once again, maybe verify all of these details before you save this recovery job. Now, once instant recovery is started and it's successful, you can go to the instant recovery area and you'll see that client starting to be built directly from VMware into the environment. Here it's created the clone machine, but in a few seconds it's going to create an instant recovery data store. There you can see it right there. There's the new data store command. Within a few more seconds, you're going to see the new RDR Server 1 audit show up in here. That server is going to power on with the network configuration disabled and pointed to the VMDKs through this data store. This data store, once again, is running off the appliance and houses the VMDKs for this audit machine. You could go in there and browse. It takes a little while when it's creating it to browse it and pull up the data in there, but you could do it. Okay, now once again, it's going to create this machine. Here in a few more seconds, you're going to see a power on command. Then we can open up this console. And the beauty of instant recovery here, whether it's live or audit mode, this is your Windows operating system. This will boot. It's using processor and memory from the virtual environment, in this case 2 CPU and 4 gigs of memory, same as the original configuration. The network's disabled on this, so you're not going to see any network IP address. Pointed to the virtual disk on the data store. If this were a live migration, it would start to migrate this disk to the data store that you choose in your recovery setup. It's the only difference. And the network would be enabled so you could get to the machine on live while it's being written to the new disk. It's up and active. This is a direct clone of this machine booted up within minutes. Here's our original RDR, and this is our audit. There's the original RDR, and here's our audit. Pretty cool process. So here we can see our audit machine is up and running. Once again, you can, log into this machine, do any kind of test. But if you log into here, you can test any local applications, any data, any databases from the back end. You just kind of have to remember that there's no network configuration. You're not on the wire. You're not affecting your production server over here. It's still up and running and doing its job. This is just kind of proof that the virtual point in time is good. You can boot off of it. You may have to put back your SQL databases through the agent anyways, right, in some cases. So pretty cool instant recovery. We'll go ahead and close this one out. We'll go back to our local appliance. When you're done with any type of audit, once again, you want to make sure you tear this down so you get the resources back to your appliance. It is using resources even to migrate that machine off of the Unitrends disk. Here you'll see that it shuts the machine down. You'll see that if you go to your VMware environment, it's going to go ahead and break the machine down here as well and remove all snapshots. It even takes the data store away as well too once it's all done. This instant recovery data store will go away from there as well too. Now this other data store, remember, that's our Windows agent-based instant recovery, our WinIR. That's that other data store. Make sure you don't do anything with that one. All right, but eventually here, this will go away. It's all torn down now. So now you can spin up a different point in time if you need to. After you've done some recoveries, once again, you may see some changes in here in your restores area. Any type of restores that you do. Here you can see I did a couple of RDR restores. You can see the first one's already done. Now it's moving on to the incremental. So it's not going to be that long till it puts that clone back. Remember, this is the clone machine that we're putting back, and it says the name of it in this piece here. Right in the command. Now, you'll also see, once again, in your Jobs tab, under the Recent System Jobs, though, you'll see where you created a point in time for instant recovery and where you tore it down. Here's the instant recovery for RDR, and here's where you tore it down. It was up for 10 minutes. Those don't show up in the recovery reports. Okay, if I go and run recovery history report, and let's just look at today, the stuff we've done today. I could go farther back. You'll notice these are the only two that show up, and there'll be more in here because this one's still running, and it still has to go through all the rest of these restores. You can see that. Pretty cool. So that's a pretty good overview for you for VMware recovery.